Yes. Right, we only have 2 films for this episode, and they're very, very similar types of films.
Absolutely.
There's nothing to separate them at all here. Scott, there's like this massive monkey and an angry iguana. And they fight.
Yes, which clearly it's the same metaphor for race struggles. Yes, we're talking, of course, about Godzilla vs. Kong, another film where it would seem that the title pretty much describes the content of the film adequately enough. Certainly that's the marquee attraction of it, although unfortunately Godzilla vs. Kong versus a bunch of nonsense is a more correctively descriptive title. But anyway, if you need further description of the nonsense elements, here you go. Large Monkey Kong is being held in a secured containment facility by generic chaotic neutral science corp monarch, and the film instantly loses me by not shortening Kong containment to Kongtainment. Do I have to do everything around here? Jeez.
See, I never even noticed that. I was just more hung up in why King Kong was in the Truman Show.
It was the Truman Show dome for whatever reason. Yes. But of course, he's being held because if a large lizard Godzilla detected him, there would be a Barney to establish who's the Alpha Titan. Now, some of you might be asking why Godzilla was happy enough to let Kong chill on Skull Island, but not anywhere else, and if so, why would Monarch risk removing Kong from Skull Island? And I say to you, kiddo, if you're going to pick plot holes in a film called Godzilla vs. Kong, you're in for a long night, and maybe you ought to watch a film that's more based on established science, like The Core. I knew you'd get a kick out of that one.
That's scary, Scott, the idea of in a film in which the great idea is to bump start the Earth because it's stopped spinning is more scientifically cromulent than this nonsense.
Yes, pretty much. Meanwhile, lawful evil Science Corp, Apex Cybernetics, are up to something no good, according to Brian Tyree Henry's swivel-eyed conspiracy theorist Bernie Hayes, a mystery which does indeed mysteriously attract the attention of Godzilla, who does a bit of his patented stomping of their American facility. Millie Bobby Brown's Madison Russell can't bring herself to accept Godzilla's heel turn, and seeks, alongside Bernie, an explanation for this behaviour. Turns out it's Mechagodzilla, telepathically controlled, using reanimated tissue of General Zod. Sorry, Ghidorah, error in my notes there. Further, meanwhile, Apex have convinced Monarch to let them borrow Kong for an outing to the Hollow Earth in their alternate gravity shuttlecraft for some reason. Something to do with energy signatures to wirelessly recharge Mechagodzilla, I think. But the important thing, it says here, is that Godzilla finds a magic axe to fight a lizard with. Am I on drugs? Was this real? Where am I? Who is the president? Axe in hand, Kong then fights Godzilla against the backdrop of Hong Kong skyscrapers with their RGB lighting set to vaporwave until they realise that both their mothers' names were Martha and team up to fight Mechagodzilla, who, wouldn't you know it, has gone evil. I am as surprised as you are. Now, look, I am not yet so destroyed by cynicism that I cannot appreciate a solid CG showreel of action nonsense, and there's about half an hour of solid CG thumpy battles and ludicrous destruction that appeals to me on a very base level. Unfortunately, this is a nigh on 2-hour film and is diluted heavily with incoherent techno-drivel spouted off by characters ultimately so inconsequential I've not even mentioned them in the recap, despite them having more screen time than the headline attractions. Now, I entirely understand this from a production and budgetary standpoint. It's a lot cheaper per inch of film to animate Kyle Chandler than King Kong, but with respect to all involved, no one's signing up to see this film on the basis of Alexander Skarsgård versus Rebecca Hall. It's Godzilla versus Kong, but contains altogether too little of that and too much of Brian Tyree Henry's teeth-grindingly irritating supposed comic relief. I am, by this point, old enough and ugly enough to have seen much worse films attempting similar spectacle, but after the enjoyable Godzilla King of the Monsters, I had hoped that this franchise had hit its stride. This is a definite stumble, if not a complete faceplant. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
This is appalling garbage and I hated every moment of it. Well, maybe not every, but honestly quite close to it. Yeah, it's nonsense of the worst variety. And I know you're always in dangerous ground or like thankless ground, so you start trying to pick holes in this, but it's just... It's just like...
There's so many holes.
Bunch of
it's
crap.
all holes.
It's holes all the way down, Scott.
Yes.
It's like the Hollow Earth's been mentioned a couple of... It's in Kong Skull Island, it's in King of the Monsters at least. But didn't have to do it. That's just because Bradley Whitford is a conspiracy theorist and he's believing in everything. You didn't have to make this one real. And I know it's all nonsense, but it's like, this like, right, here's our idea. There were these giant creatures in this planet's past. They were dormant, they woke up. Okay. That kind of works. Basic concept for your science fiction monster movie. Okay. But no. The Hollow Earth as well. Right? Why is there sunshine in the middle of the planet? No.
Because of the inverse sun.
Yeah. Right. And the Earth's a sphere, but the gravity boundary appears to be a plane. So okay. No, I'm thinking at all. I'm not thinking too hard about it. I'm thinking at all. There's my problem. And it's just nobody's character motivations make sense. All the humans are, as they always are in these films, impossibly dull. Yeah. And also, Millie Bobby Brown's character's back, despite having been in the film before, a willing member of a murderous terrorist group. We're supposed to forget that now? Okay. She's rubbish. Kyle Chandler's even more terrible in this than he was in the last one, but fortunately he's in it 10% less, or rather a tenth of it, so that's good, I guess. It's rubbish, and I'm so fed up with these types of films. I'm so bored of destruction. And there are moments in the film that look good, at least.
Look, in its defence, there are moments of the CG, there's the odd kind of flaky bit here and there, but for something that is not actually insanely budgeted by the standards of this sort of thing, it looks great. For like 90% of the time, some of the CG is really, really good. And that's what I'm saying. On some level, I can, at moments, appreciate it just on that level. It's a good showreel.
Yeah.
But it's a bad film.
Yeah, it's a terrible film. And like some of the more simple shots that I really liked, actually. There's a couple of shots of like Godzilla just almost staring to the camera, and in 4K it looks incredible. Like really appreciating the detail of this creation, and some of the fighting between Kong and Godzilla and Mechagodzilla eventually, I'm quite enjoying. But but what I was meaning about some bits that I like, Scott, it's not in terms of the quality, it's just like it's the style, because the Hong Kong fight looks really good. Yep. Right, that's visually distinctive. You've got the skyscrapers with all the neon around them, and it looks good. But it's the destruction stuff. It just bores me. That's been the case for years and years now. But you've seen lots and lots of buildings being destroyed. It's dull. It's so uninteresting. I'll happily watch the characters beat each other up, but there's another building being destroyed, and I rewatched King of the Monsters a couple of days before this, and I've watched Kong Skull Island again as well. And in particular, there are no buildings in Skull Island, so obviously it's only in King of the Monsters, but this is the same problem as that, in that when the buildings are being destroyed, it's like, yeah, okay, I've seen buildings being destroyed for, well, let's go back to, say, Independence Day, really.
It feels like forever,
really starts, almost 20 years. It's very much lost its novelty. It's not interesting. And it's actually less interesting now because I don't think the buildings look like they're getting destroyed in any way convincingly. They fall apart far too uniformly and far too easily. King of the Monsters was worse than this, but there's still a lot of this. Like, somebody will smash into a building, the whole building will fall apart like it's made of Lego, lots of uniform-sized bits appear, and like, well, they're convinced they're building it, but I'm just weary of it. It's not inventive. Like, we're going to destroy stuff. I've not seen that much, today. But, yesterday I watched a film with it in,
Yeah, I've not watched it in a while, but what I always remember liking about King of the Monsters was the not the destruction, but it was the shots where it was all like really weird atmospheric effects going on. It was like fighting through the middle of a fog bank where you could only see half of it going on. Although I thought that all worked on a kind of more artistic level in terms of fighting, rather than just seeing another skyscraper getting destroyed again, which I was tired of when I played it in Rampage on the Spectrum.
Yeah, that actually I think works a bit less now you watch the King of the Monsters, but the other thing is this is definitely a film that I think you need to see in a cinema, because watching this on a 5 meter high, a 3 meter, 5 meter high cinema screen compared to television, no matter how big your TV is. No, it's not the same. And I was acutely aware of that going back to watch King of the Monsters. On the much smaller scale that is necessitated to be watching on a television, it loses so much of its impact. It was remarkable how much less impactful and appealing it was. So it kind of figuratively and literally diminishes the size of the monsters. So they become less special because you're not seeing huge towering creatures on a screen, a huge towering screen. And then because they're diminished, it shifts the focus to the humans. And oh my God, are the humans boring? They're awful. When even you got somebody as good as Charles Dance, now he's appalling in King of the Monsters because everybody is, but at least he's not as boring as Kyle Chandler and his family. But I think Godzilla versus Kong has that same problem. It's like when you're watching the TV, it's definitely losing a lot of the impact. For a film like this, you want ridiculously loud cinema surround sound. Deafening you and like buildings are being smashed by because Godzilla's just uppercutted Kong with his tail or something like that, and so it brings too much focus to humans who are universally terrible in these films. Even without Aaron Taylor Johnson, they're boring as a very boring thing, and the whole story is nonsense. The motivations are nonsense. Alexander Skarsgård, that may be the most boring character I've seen in a film in a good long while.
Oh, yeah.
And then, again, I've said before, I am incapable of not thinking about things, but it's like nobody in this film thought about anything. It was like written by a 7-year-old.
It's a lot of, and then what happened was.
Jay from Red Letter Media on Half in the Bag, when he was talking about this, he put it quite well. And not for the first time this podcast, I'm pinching a line from him, but I thought he put it quite well. It's like, the whole film feels like a child smashing their two toys together. And honestly, it never rises above that. There is something in some of the Godzilla films in the past and stuff. There's a schlocky quality to them. Okay, they're ridiculous films, and they're just like man in rubber suits, pushing each other over and with cardboard buildings and stuff. But that schlockiness you can let go when it's a film that only cost a couple $1 million. You don't get to have schlocky when you cost $200 million. It's like, no. Schlock and low budget go together. Schlock and $200 million. No, make it better. It's not acceptable.
No, and I agree, although apparently this has been successful. I don't know how. I don't know what the metric for success is these days, given that everyone's more or less locked down, but apparently people are happy enough, seemingly, with the financial returns in this. I don't understand quite how.
Well, it's up to $400 million in the cinema, so people are going back there, but although you want to be careful, according to they have never wrong Wikipedia, but it's the most successful launch item in HBO Max's history, which is a particularly stupid line given that service isn't even a year old yet. So it's been successful, and I'm kind of wondering why. It's just pent up demand, perhaps. Because it's just so dull. And as I remember now where I was going with my point about the schlock and my inability to not think about things, but some of it's so stupid. Like the after credit scene, Godzilla King of the Monsters, was the reveal that somebody had got a hold of one of King Ghidorah's heads, right? That's become the basis for Mechagodzilla. But in this film, in Godzilla vs. Kong, they haven't used Ghidorah's brain or anything, but no, his skull with some RGB lighting coming out of it. That's how... No, you're a stupid film and I don't like you.
That bit is talking distinctly about telepathy. Maybe telepathy lives in bones rather than brains. Who knows? No one knows because it's nonsense, as is everything else in the film. So I try not to expend too many cycles on it in my brain. I think you know what? Actually, going back to the thought about spectacle, I mean, it's entirely valid. It's the reason although I loved Mad Max Fury Road, I've not seen it since the cinema because I know I'm going to watch it again on a smaller screen and it's not going to be as good because it's not going to have the same kind of sense of spectacle, and that's something that relies on scale much less than this does. The only saving grace, weirdly enough, that I think maybe this film had was that I now have a pair of headphones that have haptic feedback, so it gives me a nice bit of deep bass shaking of the head when that happens, which kind of does actually make a lot of difference in these kind of big punchy monster fight films, but it's not enough. It's certainly not enough to save the film, and it's certainly enough to spend 100 and whatever quid it is for a pair of razor nary headphones.
The sound design's good. I mean, I enjoyed parts of that because I've got a 5.1 setup. My receiver actually is a Dolby Atmos receiver, but I really can't be bothered trying to fit speakers to my ceiling. That seems like way too much hassle. I'm just waiting to get back to a cinema. Yeah. But, with proper 5.1 and a good subwoofer and stuff, I mean, it sounds good. So I'm still getting some of the benefit of the sound, but it's not the same because what you really want is to be getting shaken in your seat by the sound, which you can't do if you have neighbours, which I do. So it's like, this is an event film. This is, I prefer to see anything in a cinema. I love cinema. I love the experience, as long as there aren't just, jackasses in the cinema with you, which is fortunately where I live.
Steel popcorn, sticky
floors. Yeah, I get where I live. But fortunately, the jackasses aren't so much of a problem around where I live. But yeah, this is a film made for being seen on a huge screen with, stomach rumbling bass and things. So it's definitely the lesser film for that. But I still don't think that's going to cover up for its massive defects, because the whole thing is just arrant nonsense.
Yeah, I cannot imagine, even under ideal circumstances with a suitable level of alcohol imbued beforehand, I can't imagine this ever getting above. And if you're watching it, as most of us are, from the comfort of lockdown and in substantially less than ideal conditions, it is just bad.
And I probably shouldn't, but just to go back to the humans, to how terrible they are, like that really annoying character you mentioned, the conspiracy theorist podcast host.
Yeah.
But I think this film doesn't really seem to know what it's saying. It's like he's going on and thinks there's like the Apex are up to something, and also there's a Hollow Earth, but then they also have written that the character bathes in bleach. And all the kind of the other vaguely MAGA related conspiracy theory stuff and whatever else, what other nonsense that is. But he's proved to be right with the Apex thing and the Hollow Earth. So what's your message here precisely? I was supposed to believe those things as well because he was right with them, or are you just written by a hack? I mean, I'm not going to suggest which one I think it is, but,
Yes, the error you've made there is assuming there's a message in a film called Godzilla vs. Kong. Yeah,
unfortunately, the whole thing just bored me. It's it's disappointing too because, and I said I went back and watched Kong Skull and I'm still pretty bored by that. I didn't like that much the first time. It was okay at best. King of the Monsters I like considerably less now, I think, because of the lack of spectacle. But having liked those somewhat, and the fact that one of the screenwriters wrote this, or at least worked on the screenplay for Thor Ragnarok, which is amazing. Yeah. I'm like, there's so much fun. Oh, okay. Oh dear. Oh.
Whoops.
Oh. Do you know what this film needed, Scott? Mecha Streisand.
And Sidney Poitier. Yeah.
And Leonard Maltin. But mostly Sidney Poitier and Mecha Streisand. Yep.